If you're not using multi-factor authentication and you have data in the cloud, you will likely be compromised, is what I would say. Okay. And so what the background here is self-service password reset. It gives you the ability to have users reset their forgotten passwords in a secure method natively built into Office 365. Okay, that is what they're calling their, and they've recently enhanced and upgraded this experience. So let me tell you the backdrop here and why you should care about this. Historically, if you had users that you wanted to get enabled for self-service password reset, that was a whole separate enrollment and registration experience, right? And you had different methods and factors that you could have them set up with, such as like secret questions, a phone call, a phone call to their, or an email, excuse me, an email with a secure code in that, right? That's what you could use to do self-service password reset. Then, of course, Microsoft had their multi-factor authentication story. And if you were doing multi-factor, there was an enrollment process for multi-factor. And it was totally a separate flow, separate questions, separate options than you got with self-service password reset and vice versa. So Microsoft has allowed you to converge that enrollment experience together. So now whether you are being prompted to enroll in multi-factor or whether you're being prompted to enroll in self-service password reset, you have a common, consistent, quote, converged user experience there. They recently enhanced this version. And so in your tenant, let me, if you go, let me just share my screen here real quick. And let's go here. Ooh, you know what? I'm not able to share. Here we go, share my screen. Okay, so in Azure Active Directory, this is just a demo environment that I've got. If I go into here and I look at user settings, down here under this access panel, manage settings for access panel preview features, this is the hidden door to where you turn this converged experience on. And it's users can use preview features for registering and maintaining security information. So what does Microsoft call this if they have both SSPR and MFA merged together? They're calling it your security information. Okay, makes sense, right? That applies to SSPR, it applies to MFA, etc. And this is the enhanced view. Some of you that have older Office 365 tenants will see two options here: the initial version of this and then the new enhanced version. It's the exact same concept. It's just they've updated the user experience, so they're calling it enhanced. This tenant is new enough that it didn't have the initial preview functionality of that. You can turn it on for everyone, selected users or groups, or none. Okay. By doing the enhanced version, you have a much cleaner experience. Okay. And so, for example, if I go to AKA, let me make sure .ms/MFA setup. This is a quick little way. If you don't have this inferior experience, it's like, hey, I need more information. And this is going to walk me through the new converged enhanced experience to get MFA enrollment set up. If you don't recognize this, because this is the new enhanced experience, and it's very simple. It's 10 times better than the old MFA enrollment / SSPR enrollment experience. Okay, and it guides the user through it, and it actually guides the user to use the most secure method. The old method, the user had to pick which one they should use, and they had to know what they all were. This guides you right through using the app, which is the most secure method for this functionality. Okay, and so it tells you, hey, go get the Microsoft Authenticator app. Once you've got that, go allow notifications and then add an account, work or school. Great. Now point your phone at the screen. It's going to give you the QR code. Scan this with the QR code, et cetera, et cetera. It just walks you right through that. Okay. The same thing applies if you're enrolling someone in self-service password reset. So that's, I didn't change anything there. That's over here in the password reset. Right? If users can do self-service password reset and our authentication methods, we can now support the Microsoft Authenticator app with like push notifications to use that to reset your password. And you're enrolled and it's all converged and it's a great story now, okay? You can turn on these various methods, all this kind of stuff. I would not recommend security questions. I'm not a fan of them. Anyway, okay, so that's SSPR, converged multi-factor authentication, and why you should care about it and why you should use it. Once again, if you're not doing multi-factor authentication, you definitely want to get that enrolled. And before enrolling that for everyone, I would highly recommend using the converged experience that is in preview right now. Okay, so what's next? If I go back to the slide deck here, let me just stop sharing here. Right, and we've got the, are you sharing there? Okay, great, thank you guys. Okay, so sign-in logs. This is super important. Everything in Office 365 and Azure AD has fantastic auditing and logging built into it. And so there's a super important thing that you should understand about troubleshooting and getting visibility into what's going on with your Office 365 environment. So I'm going to share my screen again here. And what we're going to do here is in Azure Active Directory, once again, I'm just at portal.azure.com, and I then went and drilled into the Azure Active Directory blade, and here we are, right? Show my screen. Am I not sharing? There we go. Okay. So inside here, if you can go to the sign-in logs here. Okay, there's another way to get to this. If you go to users and look up an existing user, I'll just randomly pick someone here. You can then look at the user sign-in logs for that specific user. It's like a filtered view for that specific user. Okay, I'm going to go back to Azure Active Directory, go to my sign-in logs here. By default, you only get a few columns. You get these columns right here. Okay, the date, the user, the application, and the status. Okay. And you can filter on these things here, but one of the most valuable things that you should be doing is go into the columns options here and then enable these additional columns. The IP address that the user used to log in, the client app that was used, the operating system, the browser, the location, that's the named location that they've correlated based off the IP address. Correlation ID, I'll get into that method, and then what MFA methods they ended up doing, the detail, and the results of that. So I'm going to enable all of those columns, okay? Now I get a bunch more options up here that I can use for filtering, okay? So you know how we talked about legacy protocols and that Exchange Online was going to get modern authentication turned on for you if you haven't turned that on? Might be really helpful for you to know who's using these old legacy protocols and who's going to be affected. This is your answer to how to figure that out. You go into the sign-in logs, and logs never lie, right? And you add the, where is it? The client app, and look at these available client apps here, okay? If I want to see who's using IMAP or POP, or who's authenticating with SMTP to relay mail, or these older clients like older Office clients. So this is going to tag my Office 2010 stuff, right? I can easily just select that and say, show me logins for the last month. If you don't see the last month here, that's because you're not using Azure AD Premium. We should talk, and hit apply, right? And I've got one account that's been signed in here. It came from this IP address coming out of San Jose, California. And the date and time and what, I mean, this is great, right? I can see exactly what's going on here. If I want to look at who's using IMAP, right? Simple stuff here, okay? No IMAP connections, great. So the point of this is be aware of the columns, turn them on. You can then start filtering and looking at different logins, successful logins, failed logins, you name it. The other really powerful thing here is I can now export this data into just a CSV file. This download option here allows me to download 250,000 records based on the filter criteria that I just applied to these logs. Okay, and so that I can pull it out into a Excel file, slice and dice it, filter it, do whatever you want, put it in Power BI, etc., etc. There also is integration to export this data to a location that stores it longer than 30 days. So by default, well, you can't change this. You can't get any more than 30 days worth of data in the portal here for sign-in logs. If you need to collect sign-in data longer than that, we need to talk, because we need to get that data exported into another repository. You can put it into Log Analytics of Azure. You can put it into an Azure storage account. You can dump it out to a third-party SIEM system. There's options available to you there, right? So that's a quick update on how to see what's going on with your logins, how to add those columns, and the value that you can get out of figuring out what kind of apps are being used to log in and if they're successful, if they passed MFA or not, all that kind of stuff.